In this video I wanted to show you the contrast between the new structures of the 20th century, mid-20th century, mid to late, and the old world structures, because I think it really highlights the difference in difference between the old world and the new world. And we begin with the post office here in Baltimore, built in 1972. And you're going to see quite a few government buildings, city halls, courthouses, post offices. This one built at a time when Baltimore's population was 900,000. And just another post office location in that region before we get to the old world structure. And there it is right there. This one built at a time when the population was half of what we saw in that the newer structure, or so we're told. I really don't think that any of these structures were built when they tell us they were built. And you can tell with the very short duration that many of these stood that something is wrong here with the narrative. These are looking very, very old. And Baltimore having its own interesting history. This is part of the 1904 fire aftermath. We've seen so many of these rubble photos. There's the post office right there. And there it is again. And do we really think that this thing only stood for 40 years? Or is it possible that this was standing for quite some time? Now, most of what you're going to see in this video have been demolished and are coming from my two books on demolished structures from North America. And I'm going to take this opportunity to shamelessly plug these books. This is my really my only source of any income with the work I do here on the old world. And the nice part about that is you get something to remember that donation by, and also something that you can share with other people. I find that these have been a really good reference resource, a good gateway for people to, first of all, their jaw drops when they see a lot of these structures. When you tell them they're from North America, it really crushes the narrative. And it can be an entry point if you're trying to convince someone or have a conversation with someone, but you're having trouble describing what you're talking about. So the links for these are in the description. They might make a nice Christmas gift, something along those lines, if you don't have it. And I thank you for being here with me on this journey. Let's get into more of these modern monstrosities. So we get the Cincinnati Federal Building, and yeah, there's a name for this architecture. They do call it brutalism, and you can see how Borg-like the architecture really is. How there is really doesn't appear to be any art involved, except for, and you're going to see this throughout the video, sometimes each of these structures will have some sort of sculpture either out front or on the building, and I'm wondering if we're looking at some sort of indication that some sort of coordinated effort, and if this is any sort of hidden symbolism hidden from the unknowing masses, that this process is going on and the elimination of the old world structures is going on. You can see Cincinnati population being, let's say, about 500,000 at this time when this thing would have been built. I don't have an exact date, but you can tell it's the 60s, 70s, somewhere in there. And this is what it replaced. This is 1885 to 1936, again a very short duration, but a massive structure, 1885. 300,000 people. Cincinnati, not a small city. Really making no sense, of course, the way they put these things together, and the fact that they stand for such a short time. And they look so much nicer than what they were replaced with. An indication of two different types of consciousnesses. And this is getting back now to the old world and what we consider to be a time that we have no memory of. And I do think that we existed at that time. And when I say we, I mean that the consciousness we draw from. We may have been existing in a different form, and we may have lost technology or had technology modified in some way along the way. But I think the contrast in these structures helps to really highlight that. I don't think this is the same one. It showed up in a search. I kept it anyway. We have a nice interior view of these modern buildings, looking very familiar, looking very stark. But Columbus originally had this for its courthouse. Apparently built in 2 years in the 1880s. In the 1880s, when Columbus had less than 100,000 people, not even close to 100,000 people. But apparently they had the skill set and the presence of mind and to construct such a marvelous building. You can see when you get close enough, you can see the level of detail is off the charts. This is something that you would book a ticket and travel to Prague to go look at. It's certainly not something you think of as being in our own backyard here in North America. This is close to the time when it was demolished. This is what they do to these buildings. It's like they mutilate them before they destroy them. You can see the decapitation, you can see the boxiness happening here already. But originally, it stood in its glory as a beacon of the old world. And a large and important part of the old world has to do with energy and the energetics of the grid system itself. The ley lines here, and how there seems to be a harmonious aspect to everything that was constructed. Nothing like what we're looking at here, where it's just sort of an again, that brutalist word comes to mind. It's such a fitting word. Now, if you're clinging to the conventional historical narrative, you'll probably be shouting at the screen right now that this is just the way that they built in the post-World War II era. This was all about clean lines and streamlining for purpose. And there's truth to that for sure, but what I suggest as we look at these structures is that there's a more coordinated effort going on, and maybe it's even at a subconscious level. Maybe the ones that are doing the bidding and of the elimination of the old world don't really exist in a conscious form. Maybe that's how this happens, and it requires us to become conscious to actually do away with the destruction of this old world culture. Again, you can see this one standing for 34 years. It looks like this is the original post office in 1897. Hard to believe that they're building something like this at the turn of the 20th century, but that's what they'll tell us at a time when Detroit's got less than 300,000 people. You have to ask yourself why, and then of course, where are these skilled tradespeople coming from? Are they all the Italian and Irish and German immigrants that wanted to bring a little bit of home onto the North American continent? Really, this thing only stood for 40 years? I don't know about you, but I find that difficult to believe. And you're seeing a pattern now repeat itself as well with these lower window areas and the fenced off area so you can't fall in. A very interesting and time consuming and really not needed part of early building practices. The resources that it would take are unimaginable really to dig, to excavate for this and then to build on top. But that's what we'll be told. It really is a thin narrative. I use the analogy of a gold bar. So let's say you get handed a gold bar and told that is the conventional historical narrative, and you have it in your hand and you scratch the corner of it with your thumb and realize that it's just gold on the surface, and that beneath the surface is lead. The question is here, do you need to keep scraping the entire bar to convince yourself that it's lead? Or do you know just from that one scratch that the entire thing is fake? So I think that hopefully that analogy resonates with you. This is part of the sculpture work that I was talking about. This is in Evansville, Indiana. You're going to see more of these homages, I think, to the destruction of the old world. That's what I'm starting to think. Maybe that's the tinfoil hat in me that is drawing conclusions that aren't there, but it's a pattern that seems to emerge, and we're in the business of pattern recognition here, because we are trying to research something that doesn't have a framework for us to anchor to, just really has the visuals and a lot of our ideas. So that gold bar has been scratched. Here again, the mutilation process in full display. They take the towers down, and eventually they tear them down. A gold bar has been scratched, and the lead is being exposed, and it's up to you now whether or not you need to continue scratching to convince yourself that it's lead, or are you in denial and you still believe it's gold in other places. Franklin Regional Senior High School in Pittsburgh, having that real institutional feel. Again, that chopped off flat roof. Looks like we've got 2 stories here, which is typical. You don't see many schools get taller than that in the modern day. I just wanted to give you a close-up of the modern brickwork that we can that we get a chance to take in before I show you the original Franklin High School. Yeah, what do you think? This photo here coming from 1893. 1893. Again, 200,000+ people living in Pittsburgh. Take a look at the windows on the side here. Indications that there's been regrading going on, but you've got a quadruple arch entryway for this high school, and this is, we're told, apparently just how they built back then. So I'm not buying it. Are you? Grand Rapids. Anyone have any idea what the heck that's supposed to be? Maybe there's a local out there that can explain the reason. We get this locally too, where I am. Strange sculptures. A lot of money spent on strange sculptures that really don't seem to symbolize anything. You know, and part of me wants to apologize for subjecting you to this brutalism here on this channel, but I felt it important to highlight the contrast, because I think it does illustrate the point that something here has been lost, and it's not just something that you can attribute to the way it was and the way it is. There's much more going on here, I think. So this City Hall in Grand Rapids is also a nice indication that the way it once was, or the way it is, can't hold a candle to the way it once was. I like the Antiquitech on the top there. Still stands, actually, but not used for that purpose. And this really giving you that sense of age, right? I don't know about you, but that could easily be 500 years old. Some interior shots too. The interior finish is impeccable in most of these structures. The archways, the decorated archways. Here's a shot from that lower stairwell. So the complete package is, there's so much purpose built into these structures. Even this, why would you have a mini column here? It's we don't understand the energetics, I think, of the old world, so a lot of it is just looks fancy and looks frivolous. So maybe we even pawn it off as frivolity of the wealthy classes, but I think there's a much more purpose to the beauty that we're seeing, and it's not just for the sake of it. Guthrie, Oklahoma, and I've done my best to provide you with dates. Some of them I just couldn't find. But this is the original City Hall. Oh, sorry, this is the new City Hall. It may be the same structure, because here's the original, and I don't really know it, so I find it confusing. This is absolutely ridiculous. Obviously, from coming out of the 1800s, at a time when Guthrie had less than 10,000 people living there. I'm just wondering if this is the same structure or a modified structure, and you could imagine this part and this part here aligning with each other. And I'm not sure. They do a lot of repurposing of old world structures and a lot of taming of the decoration. But this is how it once stood. And this was apparently a laundry company at the time. Yeah. Hamilton, Ontario. Canadian flavor for you. And for some reason, it's difficult to get population demographics for Canadian cities as compared to American cities. So this is the city hall they constructed in 1960. And again, there is this aspect. I don't know what it is. I feel like we're being mocked. There's a mockery going on here. This is looking like a lot of city hall rooms, right down to the chairs too. It all seems so very typical, and a really unimpressive dome above that area there. This is the original City Hall, built in 1888. I wish I had the population of Hamilton for that time period. Nevertheless, I'm sure it was much less, and I'm sure they were just much harder workers to be pulling off this type of structure. What's amazing is even the caps on these little towers are stone. Truly, truly incredible. We're going up 5, 6, 7 stories, and you're capping these with stone. You can just imagine the ones doing the work, if we're to believe the historical narrative, complaining about the frivolity of what's going on in the upper reaches there. Not understanding. There would be a real disconnect. It doesn't make any sense. It's a little street scene of Hamilton with the streetcars. Indianapolis. And if you're wondering too, I have covered most of these cities in their own separate videos. So if you haven't seen a specific location, I suggest you type it into the search bar. There's a good chance that I've done the city that you might be looking for, especially if it's over a decent size. So this is your classic modern boxy crap, if you'll pardon me. There's the complex itself, looking like they just took the plastic model and plopped it down on the ground. Pretty boring, because this is what it once looked like. Here, 1876 to 1962. 1876 at a time when, again, about 50,000 people. Again, a very interesting contrast between the mode of transportation, even mode of transportation as it relates to the infrastructure itself, the sidewalks, the curbs, looking very old. You can see how worn these curbs are. You can see the bricks in the street there. Maybe these were the guys who built it. They're proud of their work, so they sit in front of it every day so people can have a look and admire the spectacular courthouse that they put together. They just happen to plop some statues up top here. Just showing you how old it really is. And we do have some grainy interior shots, looking like that would be the stairway up. Absolutely incredible. Look at the statue work going on here. Indianapolis, who would have thought it was a little bit more than car racing? I wonder who they're trying to depict here. They tell us the sculptor, but they don't tell us what the sculpture is of. Any ideas? We move on to Janesville, Wisconsin. Not a large town. Modern day, 60,000 people. Turn of the century, 13,000 people. This one looking like it was built in the 70s, so about 50,000 people living there then. A bit of construction, modern day construction going on there. Really hideous looking building. Don't want to stay on it for too long. This is what their old city hall looked like at a time when there was about 10,000 people living there, and that's really the only evidence I have are these two postcards taken from the same shot. And I don't even know when the... Oh, here I do have it, sorry. 1901 to 1962. So 1901 there would have been about 14,000 people, let's be generous, when they built this stone structure with the tower. So just to show you, it's not in all, just in the big cities. This is happening everywhere. Moving on to Los Angeles. Nice modern looking courthouse. Massive city in the modern day. You go back to the turn of the 20th century, you're looking at 100,000 people living in Los Angeles. Really a boom town, right, in the 20th century. Not really a lot going on before then, we'll be told. This interesting entryway as well, looking like an attempt at some old world column work, but you can tell not quite there. A little bit of decoration because it is a government building, but not quite there. Not like this guy here. 1891, when there was about 50,000 people living in Los Angeles. Apparently they had the same builders they had in Detroit and Indianapolis and all the rest of it. Maybe they flew them out in the blimp, I mean, because they didn't have planes, right? Or they took the train, because the train, all that system was relatively new at the time. Come on. You just have the same explanation going on for all these locations, and I think that's why it's important to put these together in a single video just to illustrate that point. Because often I'll get a rebuttal on a specific location with a justification, but when you see multiple locations and the indication of this going on everywhere at around the same time, again, the gold bar has enough scratches on it for you to have the confidence to throw it out or use it as a paperweight. But certainly not to rely on it as the historical truth that we've been told. Magnificent structure. Montgomery, Alabama, post office. Maybe you're thinking it's got a little bit of old world flair, and you might be right. There might be some archwork going on here, some in the bricks. A little bit of detail, not bad. It's not bad. I'll give them that. Here's a close-up of the brickwork. Certainly looking like modern brickwork that we're used to. Montgomery, Alabama, though, in the 1880s, having about 20,000 people. And despite that fact, they were able to erect this masterpiece. No doubt the historical narrative will tell us that slaves were involved or something stupid like that. Also only stands for, what, 40 to 50 years? Sorry. What do you think? Who's doing this? Who's doing this brickwork? And which one do you prefer, the old or the new? It's not really a toss-up, is it? So again, an indication that we have certainly lost something along the way, and that there has been an effort to destroy the remnants of the past. Moving to California again, to the Napa area. They once had a state hospital. Well, they still have a state hospital, and these are the photos I could find. This makes sense. You're having some sort of protection from jumping off of an upper area, maybe. Deflated ball, indicating how deflated the modern narrative is. And you've got structures like this. Don't worry, we're gonna switch to the old one. All right, if you haven't seen the Napa, I'm delaying, and here it is. This is the old state hospital in Napa, California. And videos have been done. John Levi has covered this, and other people in this research community have looked at this, because this is basically like a massive goose egg sticking out of the forehead of the historical narrative. And it should bonk you on the head, really, when you look at this, to understand that this makes no sense to construct in such a manner. And remember I mentioned that protective fence. So how many stories did you have in a supposed state hospital, so to house the insane? How many people would be inclined to be jumping out the windows with 4 or 5 stories? I don't know. It's just one of those strange things you see with these old structures. Absolutely incredible and long gone. Beautiful, beautiful structure. The same builders, though. And certainly not this group of people that are a part of the new system coming in. Accredited individuals, sorry, people that have bought into the system and have been educated within that system. Omaha, Nebraska, a modern city of 500,000 people. This one probably built again in the 60s and 70s, so we're looking at about 300,000 people when they had the justification to build this multi-storied brutalist structure. Very boring and boring to look at. Is this a sculpture right here? Hard to tell. Pretty grainy photos. These are actually hard to find, modern photos of some of these structures. It's a bit strange. Here's the old City Hall. There you have the timeline, so that one was probably built right around this time, when this one was demolished. 1890 to 1966. 1890, Omaha's got 140,000 people. We're told they also had their World's Fair at the turn of the century. Does this look new to you at that time? Newish? This looks ancient to me. And that's an interesting statue you have as well. There's a nice shot of the courthouse, which is also gone. Back in behind you have the City Hall and the B building as well. It's pretty spectacular. I think this one still stands. Correct me if I'm wrong, locals. I did do an Omaha video as well. And there you're seeing again just the type of architecture that existed in Nebraska at the time. And sticking with Omaha, they also had a post office, or have a post office that can't hold a candle to the old one. Here's a satellite post office. I like to throw these ones in there. Wouldn't that be a lovely place to work? Oh, not as nice as this one, of course. Notice the timeline as well. You have a little bit of a difference in the start date. They tore these two down in the same year, apparently, in Omaha. And again, you have the 5-arch entryway. So many arches on this structure. You're obviously seeing the similarities, I hope, with the old world structures and the style of architecture that was commonplace. Did you expect to see it in Omaha, I guess is the question. Do you expect to see it anywhere in North America? Of course, if you've done this research and have been into this work for a while, you will. But if you're new to this, I'm hoping a lot of this comes as a surprise to you. Moving on to Port Huron, Michigan. And oh, my eyes. I'm going to have to wash my eyes out with soap after looking at this one. This is awful. Awful brutalist architecture. The building itself is a mockery, I think. I think it's awful. Maybe I'm wrong. I certainly prefer the old style of architecture. And here you have the old City Hall. And such a small city as well. Apparently burned down in 1949, or burned enough for them to tear it down. You can see here they're celebrating Thomas Edison, apparently the father of electricity, or the repurposing of electricity, I would suggest. Even there you have a bit of a decapitation going on from that point to that point. They've taken a little cupola off the top there. Regina, Saskatchewan. Also an interesting narrative here. Very, very small. 2,000 people at the turn of the 20th century. In the modern day we're looking at about just over 200,000 people. You have some sculpture work here. There's also something ritualistic feeling that I get about this one. Again, stamping over the old world, and this is the old one. Supposedly built in 1908. Massive population boom in that first decade of the 20th century, we are told. 20,000 people, roughly, I would say, at the time when they built this. I need to look at the photograph, and I wonder how old is that compared to the time that the photograph was taken. And it doesn't even stand for 60 years. Most of us probably living in houses that are that old, or older, maybe. Hard to believe, again, that such a short duration for such a magnificent structure. Looking very old. Look at the tiles on the roof. Looking like it's been there for a long time. A long time. Saginaw, Michigan. And yeah, the purpose of my videos is to flood you with enough visuals that you have difficulty denying that there's something wrong with the historical narrative. This is apparently the modern stonework that they were capable of in Saginaw. There's a close-up, and they're trying here. Definitely, they're trying, but you can tell there's something missing from what it once was. 1936. Again, look how sloppy the mortar work is here. The grout lines. It's very sloppy compared to what we're used to seeing in some of the older stuff. Here's the old City Hall in Saginaw. And Saginaw, again, not having a lot of people at the turn of the century, right? 40,000. About 40,000 people living in Saginaw at that time, we're told. There's a look at the postcard. There's your timeline on the structure. Stood for 40 years. Come on now. Really? but the reason it's gone, as they'll say, is because it burned down. The fire narrative always rearing its ugly head, and I suspect many of these fires, ritualistic performance that went on, planned, and they let these things burn and tear them down and replace them with this junk. Also, Saginaw courthouse. God, that's a boring building. But they do attempt to have some sort of clock tower. Of course, they can't put it on the top of the building anymore. They have to put it on the ground, 'cause they're just not capable. Maybe it wasn't in the budget, right? The government center is so plain and Borg-like, Matrix-like, you know. This is what the old courthouse used to look like in Saginaw, torn down in the 60s. Looks like it was added onto on the sides at some point. You can see here, but we don't have a lot of evidence of this one either. This is a bit of a ghost, but you do get some interesting tech going on each of these, and the statue work again repeats itself. We see it over and over and over again. Sioux City, Iowa. Modern day city of about 85,000 people, turn of the century 30,000 roughly. Again, having this weird stark sculptural, you know, the building looks like the awful sculptures they put out front, right? As something very obtrusive to something not right. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. This is the interior. We're probably all familiar with these type of spaces. The drop ceiling and very plain, very neutral, very unoffensive to the eye that desires sleek and modern. This is the second library, we are told. I think it's the Carnegie Library, the whole Carnegie narrative, very interesting, funding over 2,000 libraries apparently to educate the unwashed masses. Here's the original library. Apparently it was built as a city hall, but was repurposed as a library when they got another city hall. 1891 to 1944, 50 years roughly. I'm going to do a little close-up. I have shown this in my Sioux City video as well, but you need to really understand the depth of the architecture here before you shrug this off as just an old building that needed replacing. Absolutely incredible structure. Absolutely incredible. Making no sense for its purpose and the timeline, of course. As always. Another Canadian example here, Thunder Bay, Ontario. And if you're not aware and interested in the Canadian content in particular, I do try to do a once a month show. It doesn't always work out that way with Frankie over at New West Reset. We call it the Knuckleheads. So you'll find those episodes in the live portion of my YouTube section. Definitely go over and give him a look as well. He's based out of Calgary. So Thunder Bay, you can see it gets a little bit of a facelift here. Somewhere along the line they tried to dress it up, give it, again you have the sculptures. This is not bad, this is more of a naturescape, I suppose. And this is homage to the World War I, is my guess. Or World War II, sorry. And interestingly, Thunder Bay not incorporating until the 70s. Originally it is Port Arthur and Fort William. And so this would be the Fort William City Hall that we're looking at here from 1905 to 1966. About 10,000 people in this area when this was constructed, we are told. But again, you have the verticality of the structure and the texture of the quality of the building materials themselves, indicating that we're looking at something from a previous civilization that built in a different way. They do eventually take the tower off at some point, and this they'll tell us is the construction process, probably the laying of the cornerstone. There's a lot of these ceremonial pictures of these structures, and I find them hard to believe, to be honest with you. I think the whole thing is a pantomime to give us a false sense of history. This is the Toronto City Hall, and I think the sculpture, the mockery sculpture that's going on here is actually embedded in the structure itself. Very interesting shape. I'm sure there's an explanation for the way that they put that together. Almost looks like two hands holding something in between. Let me know your thoughts on that. What do you think? Now, the old City Hall does still stand. Here's an old photo of the structure, absolutely ridiculous, and again having that same styling. So the crossing borders didn't seem to matter. We have two different nations. We have identical building styles. You'd think there would again be some sort of departure going on there. Are all these architects pulling from the same Richardson song sheet? H.H. Richardson? I don't think so. If you're in that area, you really need to go check this out. Check out the modern day version. This looks like it could be either ancient or brand new. Look how perfect all of the work here is. It's unbelievable. There's an old look at it again, and modern day. The level of detail is off the charts here. Absolutely spectacular. There's a little interior shot for you. Toronto, Ontario, the largest city in Canada. We're getting to the end of the file here. We coming to Wheeling, West Virginia. One of those few locations that has less people in the modern day than it did at the turn of the 20th century. And this looking very familiar. We've seen this shape now several times as well. Very cookie cutter, very unimaginative, very new world. But it didn't always look like that. This was the old City Hall in Wheeling, West Virginia, 1876. Apparently it was built at a time when there's about 20,000 people there, demolished in the 50s. Interesting sculpture in the foreground, and also interesting fountain in this location. I'm wondering if we're looking at direct evidence here, and I think we are, of a fountain being turned into a sculpture and an homage to war, whereas the fountains were a part of the energetics of the old world system. They got rid of the fountains and replaced them with these types of sculptures, and we have seen that over and over again. It is in the same location, so there's some evidence as well that they were doing away with those fountains as a part of the old world energetic system, like I mentioned. Moving on to Winnipeg, Manitoba, this Canadian flavor again. Not much to say about this structure. Again, the buildings themselves looking like the awful modern art that often gets placed up front. And this having a very similar feel again the homage to war, likely. I know they're memorials. I understand the positive aspect to that, to honor our fallen soldiers, I suppose, but we're finding out that wars are manipulations from these ruling class that have been around since they hijacked the old world. Here's the old City Hall in Winnipeg. Coming at a time right around the turn of the century. Not sure if I have the build date, but not a lot of people living in Winnipeg at the time. I love the old streetcar here. And the memorial, I'm guessing that is Queen Elizabeth, but I could be wrong. Maybe not. A nice looking structure. Now the story for demolition on this one is it was demolished in the 60s. Apparently they're saying it was falling apart. It would have only stood for about 60 years. And they're saying that, look at the way this is constructed. Does it look like it was falling apart? There you have it lit up like a Christmas tree. Does it look like it's not well constructed? Look at the way they've woven these tiles together on this roof portion. It's absolutely incredible. Imagine being out here, looking out over the city. But it was just so dilapidated it needed to be demolished, apparently. We're weary and wet, but we'll win. What do you think? We have that British Crown influence here in Canada, of course. You can see that. So this has been my compilation of the cancellation of the old world and the replacement with boxy Borg matrix BS. Hope you enjoyed. This has been an old world exploration. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, and comment. I believe we are in the process of remembering who we really are and casting off the shackles of illusion. Until next time.